Hey, and welcome back to the channel. So tonight here on the channel, if this is your first time joining us, you picked an amazing week to watch. We just ended season 2 of The Biggest Transformation. And The Biggest Transformation is kind of a reality show, if you will. And what it is we have a cast, and this cast has a goal to lose weight, to get healthier, to really battle this thing that most of them have battled with for some of them their entire life, this thing called weight. And we journey with them every single week. We have an episode here on YouTube. Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have another episode of The Biggest Transformation. And we just concluded season 2 of The Biggest Transformation, and we crowned a winner. And tonight, we have that winner here with us. And if you've never watched any of those episodes, if you've never tuned in for the seasons, I will link them down below in the description box. Before we bring Matthew on, if you have not joined our incredible growing community here on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. Let's give this guy some love, because gosh knows he has been working his butt off. Literally, he's been working his butt off for these past 12 weeks. So help me welcome to the channel, Mr. Matthew. Hi.
Hey, Carmen. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, it is. I am knowing that this was going to be coming and that we were going to have you on here. Like, I am so excited. First off, congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's, anytime you're in a thing, you hope to win, right? But to actually win, it feels good. It's fun.
Yes. And like, how does that, like, when you hear season 2, Biggest Transformation winner, like, has this sunk in yet that we just ended the first 12 weeks and that you have won? Like, you won, you lost the most.
So it was, it's tricky because, of course, I knew before it was live on YouTube. And so I kind of felt like I wanted to be careful who I did and didn't tell. So I told my wife, but it was kind of like, it's that whole, like, I have a secret thing. So it was exciting that way. And of course, now that everyone knows, it sort of comes up in random conversations or whatever. But yeah, it's starting to sink in. I think what's really fun is that my friend Shane, who got me involved to begin with, didn't win his first 12 weeks. And so I kind of get to play that whole like, because he's doing incredible. I mean, you've had him on here before, and he and I did the takeover of the channel earlier, but and he's crushing it. But he couldn't catch up with Karen in that first 12 weeks. And so it's fun having that card.
Yep.
I'm not even that competitive, but it's really fun to have that card, and that makes me competitive. So yeah, so it's been great. It's fun, and it's cool to be able to, like, telling my kids. That was really cool because they've been watching this incredible transformation from me just always being kind of, crabby and tired. Now I'm crabby and energetic. No. But yeah, so they've watched me putting in the effort and sticking with it even when I don't feel like it. And I love what that means for them long term. Like that's a big deal. That's where, even like self-servingly, I get to feel like a better dad, Yeah. So it's cool to then be able to be like, hey guys, guess what? Papa won, so yeah, it's so yeah, it's been really fun.
So what did they say when well, first off, before I want to go, you lost 66 pounds in 12 weeks, which was 21.8% of your body. Like over 20, that's over 1/5 of you. Like if they were just to chop off 1/5 of you, gone. Like how much do your kids weigh?
So my kids, my 10-year-old is, well, he's about to be 10. He's like 64. So him holding like all of his favorite toys, that's what I lost, right? Like, yeah, it's crazy. Like,
can you imagine lugging him around all day long, like on your back? Because that's essentially what you were doing 12 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's surreal. It's crazy to just think of. Yeah, it's still, and because this has all happened so quickly, a lot of it is still surreal. Like my daughter, she's 4.5, right, almost 5, and so she says things very plainly. And so when she talks about months ago, and she talks about now, and she's like, "No, Papa, I'm talking. Remember when you used to be fat? And she just says it that flatly. And it's just like, well, okay, honey. On the one hand, thank you, because I'm really not quite halfway to where I'm going. But on the other hand, keep talking, sweetheart. You're doing real good. So it's just crazy. Like I'm still getting used to being this person I want to be. Like, if that makes sense,
100%. 100%. We're going to talk about that. And I love that what did your kids say when you told them you won? Like, how did because they've watched you, like your one son works out with you regularly. They've watched you make these changes. They've seen you like at events and traveling, making good decisions and, finding a place to get online for our weekly meeting. So they've been obviously a huge part of this change. What was their response to you doing this and you winning?
Well, and that's so funny too, because my kids are so different. Like, if you were to create a personality test or a profile, they could be your categories. I mean, it's bizarre how different they are personality wise. So my youngest, who has had no interest, or not, sorry, not my youngest. My youngest he doesn't quite understand what's going on. He just knows that, he used to be able to run around downstairs whenever he wanted. And now there's a time that he's not allowed downstairs unless he's like working out. So but my oldest, he couldn't be less interested in working out or doing any of that stuff, but he was so excited. Joey was like jumping up and down and cheering. Aww. And then Peter, he's my second born. He's the one that's been working out with me, and I don't get him up in the morning. He gets himself up. He's coming to it. He's like, I'm 7. I'm going to be 8 in November, and I'm going to have a 6-pack by the time I'm 8. And he is so driven, and he's on his way. He's actually going to have a 6. It's just bizarre. I told him, and he's like, well, of course.
Of course.
No affect. Like, they're like, well, it's not of course. It was close and tight, and everyone like was working really hard and had these incredible transformations in their lives, in weight, but also just in how they see themselves. And it's not of course. And it's like, well, good job, Papa.
Right. It's great that he has that confidence in you. Of course you won, Dad. Of course. You're my dad.
His confidence, I love his confidence, and I'm still learning to nurture it without squashing it. Yeah. But this is the same kid who he's watching like the Olympics with my wife, and he's like, yeah, I'm at that level. I could do that. I can do that now. And you want to encourage your kids, but Rachel has to rein him in some. She's like, you are not an Olympic athlete at 7.
Right.
All confidence, no reality. But it's fun. And my daughter just thought it was great. And she's decided that's the end of it. Like, I was fat. I won. I'm not fat anymore. And that's for her. That's how it is. And she just says it very nonchalantly. When you used to be fat.
They say that my daughter, who's 7, she'll be 8 in February. She'll be like, Mom, when you used to be like fluffy. I'm like, yes, Liberty, yes, back then. She's like, I mean, no offense. I don't mean any offense, Mom. You were still a great person. I'm like, thanks, babe. It's so funny. Anyway, so 12 weeks was really, 12 weeks is like a quarter of a year, right? Like 12 weeks comes and goes. So it was just a little over 12 weeks ago that you applied for season 2. So, and this was not on your radar at all coming into this year.
No, in January, I was hanging out with Shane. And it was just weird coincidence. I had whined to him about I'm like, man, I'm just kind of tired of just always feeling lousy and not even lousy, like tired physically, but like just emotionally. And I'm like, I don't know, man, maybe we do something. Like, I don't know. And it was minutes after that conversation that you called him to invite him to be on season 1. And I'm saying, and I didn't know. I mean, he talked about you and Jackie from time to time, but it was all very, little pieces here and there. And he talked about some of the other things you guys have done together because you guys have quite, the history. Mm-hmm. And and I had no interest in doing. Well, first of all, I had no interest in doing another YouTube thing, and I wasn't sure. I just no, and so but good for Shane. That was going to be Shane's thing, um, and so he went and did that, um, but I lost my fluffy friend. Like this is the guy. Like, yeah, I'm gonna sit and eat ice cream, and he's sitting and eating ice cream, and
Right.
it's a lot easier to pretend that taking bad care of yourself is okay if you've got a partner in crime, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, community is everything. That's why this works, right? And so suddenly my ice cream eating, pizza eating buddy is he just won't shut up about this, and he's talking to all these people he like hardly knows, and he's talking to them every day, and suddenly he has leg day and he's whining about his legs hurting. I'm like, well, of course your legs are hurting, you're doing this dumb thing. And like, and I didn't say that to him. I wasn't gonna be like a
Right.
bad friend. I did what everyone does when their friend that also makes bad choices decides to make good choices. I played the good friend and said, that's great for you. Good for you. Yeah, I'm proud of you. Good for you. And, yay. And all the while, I'm saying, like, okay, so now you're going to go do this thing. And so we would try, because we have, hobbies that we share and things we do together. So we get together regularly. And just every week it's just on and on. It's leg day and I'm lifting and oh, I'm so sore, but I feel good. And I'm like, well, which is it? Are you sore or do you feel good? And then he starts vanishing. Vanishing. You see the transformation in him is so dramatic. I've joked with him that I wasn't looking to be inspired. He just came in and just started spewing inspiration all over the place, and he wouldn't shut up. And I'm so thankful because then when applications opened, he didn't even dare like suggest it to me or mention it to me. And even when I'd asked about related things, he's like, well, he kind of dumbed it down, like, well, obviously you don't have to go quite as hard as we've gone. And he's bolder now, right? Because he's seen it affect more people. But I was kind of one of his early passes in that, and it's like, well, you don't have to go that hard, or maybe this or that, and because just he wasn't trying to push me, right? He wasn't trying to, and you can't make someone want to change. You can't make someone
100%.
ready to change. They've got to get there on their own.
What was that tipping point for you? You've obviously seen him. You've been inspired. Like, obviously there's one part of you going, oh my gosh, be quiet, because it hits on your insecurities. But when did you actually start thinking in your brain, maybe instead of just great for Shane, maybe this could be great for me too? Like, when did that start happening in your head?
It was so fluid. I think I can describe the process to answer your question, but it wasn't. It still hasn't, which sounds funny. Weeks and weeks later, after applying, getting in, going hard for 12 weeks, winning, here we are having a conversation, celebrating that victory. And I'm going to tell you, honestly, I still haven't hit that tipping point. What happened was I saw him doing it, and I thought, well, why not me? Yeah. And then I started flirting with the idea, right? I was kind of like, because I had all my excuses in my head. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I can't afford it because investing in real food is more expensive than garbage. Investing in nutrition is expensive. All these things. And so it was like, my schedule, it won't work. My wife will never go for it. We're already so spread so thin, and we've been working so hard on getting our financial house in order and getting out of debt, taking on a new expense. There are going to be all these problems. And so the way I tend to feel out ideas, I just sort of kind of went to each one. I was kind of like, well, schedule-wise, chatting with my wife, I'm like, I'd have to get to bed sooner. I'd have to get up earlier. And she's like, yeah, that'd be really good for us, wouldn't it? And I'm talking to Shane, and I'm like, I think I'd be really distracted when we're getting together. And if I was to go on a fitness journey, I didn't even allude that I was considering this fitness journey, And he's like, oh, but then we'd have, we could talk about it. That's kind of cool. Because I already share all that stuff with you. And but I knew, financially it'd be a non-starter. So again, in talking to my wife, like, and it's a real investment. It's not free. And she's like, yeah, but we got to do something, right? And so
Aw.
every imagined hurdle in my head proved to be exactly that. So as I tried to roll the idea as this giant boulder towards the things that would stop it from working, they fell over. They weren't real. None of the hurdles, none of the problems were real, and it's so easy to get in that headspace where it's like, no, I know the only problem is me. And when you're on this side, when you're doing it right and it's working, you say that and you expect it to inspire people.
Mm-hmm.
But in the space I was in, where, like, if you look at like my why video, initially I hated myself, right? And losing weight didn't change that.
Right.
It's the line people say, you can't hate yourself skinny or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But you can realize, you can grow to a point where you love yourself as a person, and then you can decide that that person deserves to be healthy, and you can take care of that person, right? And
Mhm.
that's probably in the first even month the biggest shift mentally and the biggest transformation for me. And so one of my friends back I guess it'd be 2 weeks ago, when the teaser first half of the finale aired and I posted it on Facebook, he commented right away. He's like, so is whoever won the biggest loser, jokingly playing off that whole, reality TV thing. And I kind of thought, I laughed. I thought, I was like, no, it's a lot bigger than that, because transformation is about more than just
Yeah.
losing weight. And it's the
Mhm.
difference that if something happened and I got sick and regained weight, I know I could lose it again,
Yeah.
because the point isn't, the scale is a tool, but it's not the point, right? The point is that we'll be healthy. And even in that, that has to be born out of, caring about yourself and believing you're fit. And so that's been huge. And so to that end, um, I found, like, when I was in that mindset, the idea that I was the only problem was of no comfort, right? You're like, the only thing in your way is you. And I'm yeah, I kind of suck, don't I? Oh, well. And then it's just more self-loathing and more like, and people go, no, you don't understand. And what they're trying to communicate they can get is that when you're the only problem, when you're the only boundary, what it means is there really isn't one, right? There really isn't, like, all these hurdles, all these reasons not to act, all these reasons not to take care of myself were imaginary. They were in my head.
Yeah.
And the things we let in our head, obviously they're powerful, but
Oh, yes.
they're not real unless we let them be. And so it was just, yeah. So it was as I sort of joked about doing it, and then I kind of joked. I was like, well, I mean, if I send in a video, I'm gonna get in. I'm so likable. But that was also, that was a false confidence. And but so I made my video and sent it, my application, did all that, and even then was still certain something was gonna break, something was gonna go wrong. And then I got in, and I panicked. I was like, oh my gosh,
It's about to get real.
I'm gonna let down all these people. Like, here's, like, Carmen and Jackie are like big deals in Shane's world. Shane's my best friend. This is their first real brush with me, and what they're gonna find out is I'm a funny quitter. This is bad. I'm in trouble. Um, and it was sort of funny. Like, there were points where not wanting to be that guy was what got me up in the morning. It wasn't, the vision of where I was going to go. Now seeing where I'm going, now tasting a lot of it, but definitely not all of it.
Right.
Now I see where I'm going, and I want to be there. But even when we did the interview after I'd been declared the winner, I sat there kind of dumbfounded, like, I don't know where I want to be a year from now, Carmen. And now I'm starting to get that I'm gonna be the person I'm practicing to be. I'm gonna be a person for whom self-control is the default. I'm gonna be a person who doesn't just get a great idea and know how to execute it, but executes on it and
Right.
does what he says he's gonna do. And
Yeah.
And that's in accordance with my values. And the fact that I haven't done that is why I've been so down on myself, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
And
and
so,
so long, like when we hear about things like this, we've tried so many things in the past that we almost don't want to get too excited about something else because we don't want to let ourselves down again. When you have a track record of doing A through Z and none of it has worked, yeah. So I want to transition really quickly to, you talked about earlier that you didn't want to do another YouTube thing. What do you tell me about that?
so 10 years ago,
A
when I
decade.
hit yeah, right, 10 years ago, before I had children, when had only been married a few years, and it was just Rachel and I and our dumb little dog in the suburbs. We were totally that couple. We I and my brother-in-law wanted to. He's always been an incredible. I have two brother-in-laws, and they both really value fitness and health and me, and they've always encouraged me in big ways, and it's a gift really. And one of them worked with me to develop a YouTube series, and so we made this show called Matthew Runs for His Life, and it was fun. Like we did, and he's talented. I mean, I'm a capable editor, but he's talented. Like we did all sorts of just crazy motion graphics works and effects, and we
Wow.
shot an episode in front of a green screen. We did one where literally it was like me from the future talking to me from the present. I mean, it was so over the top, and it was fun, but it got to the point where it was more about the show than about the journey, and that was really bad, because then I cared more about views and production quality than taking. Because again, it was the core of it wasn't valuing myself and wanting to be healthy. It was, well, I'm fat, and people don't like fat people, and I don't want to be. And I believed the lie that if I wasn't fat, then I'd be happy, right?
Mhm.
And that came through in the things I said. It came through in the very tone of it. But what sucked about it the most was it was a very public failing.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, YouTube now, it's sort of ubiquitous. Everyone, there's a lot on. There was a lot less on 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
when Matthew Runs launched in our category, we quickly climbed, and we had a lot of views and a lot of movement. And so I failed publicly in front of everyone I know and thousands of people I don't. I mean, we shot 2 episodes that we never even edited and put out there. And one of them was at 5K in partnership with Lifetime Fitness, and they gave us press passes and all. It was really cool. And I show up at that thing, and I'm getting recognized by people, like as a person in this space. And this one gal, we interviewed her, and she was going to be on the show, and she thought that was really cool. And then it never aired. Like it just,
Yeah.
I vanished. I got busy. It became an excuse. And I knew because my summers have always been busy, I knew summer was going to be, it was this bad. I knew summer was going to be midsummer, probably mid-June was when I was going to fail at this one too, going into it. Like I was confident of that. And just with changing, my perspective, changing all that, it just changed everything. And so when it came that time of year and life got crazy, it was crazy as I expected, but I kept going. And
Well, it's because you built your vision. And when your vision gets strong, and obviously you're still building it, but when your vision gets stronger than your excuses no longer have the same power, which is amazing, by the way, that you were able to break that cycle and push through. I mean, dude, 66 pounds in 12 weeks, that's like 5.5 pounds a week. Like that's moving, like that's consistency, that's effort, that's incredible is what that is really. Yeah. So what was, I want to ask you this because there's a lot of people who are in the same position you're in where they have this track record of failure. And I feel like all of us feel like our failures are public, even if it's not on YouTube, right? Because most of the time we tell somebody that we're starting a diet or we tell somebody we're working out. And then when we quit, when we don't follow through, like we just want everybody to forget that we started that. And there's always somebody that's like, hey, whatever happened with, so what was different this time? like what was different this time?
Yeah, no, that's I was thinking about that just the other day. Because my last weight loss journey was only a few years ago, and it was in the same social circles, and so even where I work, people saw me lose a bunch of weight, not this much, but a bunch, and then gain it back.
Yeah.
And I think first, I think those failures, although it didn't seem like it at the time, and I wouldn't recommend any of the things I tried. I think they were important. I think they were necessary. I think I had a lot to learn about myself.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known this was different or what was working if I hadn't tried
Yeah.
a dozen different things and every book that people threw at me and every fad that people threw at me and every whatever. I mean, failing sucked and it hurt for sure, but every time I tried again, there were things that were familiar and I remembered what kind of worked and what kind of didn't. And so then building on that, the biggest switch, and I know I keep coming back to this, but the biggest switch was that the goal wasn't to lose weight so that I could like myself.
Yeah.
And what's funny is in the beginning it was. So I started out on the same path. I started out on the same dumb journey that I've, floundered at how many times. But having a community, having people that I was checking in with consistently, especially people who were also on that path, having, your support as someone who's not only done it, but has stayed the course, I know a lot of people have lost weight. I can be like, how hard is it to lose 20 pounds? As a fat guy, I can lose 20 pounds in an afternoon. What do you got? It's nothing, And then it's funny because people will approach me really meekly. People who are quite fit, and they'll be like, yeah, I know it's not the same, but I've lost, 5 pounds in the last 3 months. And I'm sitting here like, that's amazing, because if I looked like I don't know if I would have even been trying. That's awesome, and I don't say that, but it's because it does, it's so, yeah, I think those are the biggest differences where the goal ended up being different, like what I'm actually working for, why I'm working for it, and who I'm working with.
Yeah. Environment is so freaking important. And you won season 2, and then we announced there was going to be a season 3. And so that's going to be starting here shortly. And you are going to be a mentor. Like, how's that? How's that feel? Like, you've obviously got quite a track record. You did so many things right. How's it feel to know that you're going to have other people that you're going to get to help get unstuck?
I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it for 2 reasons. One, I think it's going to be humbling because there are things where, like, my mentor was amazing. Andy was amazing. And there were things that he did really right and things where I was like, oh, I'd do that differently. So now I'm going to get that chip off my shoulder and realize it's harder than I think, which is always healthy. But also I've watched how, because I had Andy as a mentor, and then Shane was also mentoring Debbie. And which is fun too, because Debbie and I were always kind of right neck and neck for most of it, And I'm amazed at how, like anything else, when you're teaching it, when you're presenting it, when you're supporting it, it reinforces what you're doing as well. And so it really, even though, obviously my primary role is to be there as their cheerleader, to remind them that they can do it, really just because I know it works, to lend them my belief until they make that pivot that I made and find their own, right? And to reinforce the whole community that way. But beyond that, I know that as you go along, and this is what I've seen with Andy and I, it really does become a case of iron sharpening iron, and here Andy's formal commitment to me ended weeks ago, and we're still in touch frequently because we're friends, And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited to develop those relationships, and I'm excited to see the people who are involved in season 3's lives change. And it'll be cool because they have 2 seasons ahead of, before them. And it was neat for us in season 2, having a season ahead of us. Season 1 didn't have that luxury. And I know on your journey, other than the people who got you involved, you didn't have that luxury, of course, 7 years ago now?
Yeah.
Right? Like, isn't that wild? So
going on 8, it's crazy.
Yeah, congrats. That's amazing, and it's exciting because it's proof, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But I also know that you've engaged in inspiring other people, and I have no doubt that that's been part of your success too,
Yep.
So I feel really privileged to be a part of that,
Yeah. Well, it helps when you mentor somebody else, right? It goes from following what somebody else says and believing, okay, you believe they know what they're talking about, to when you start to teach it, it goes from their belief to starting to become your belief. And when you take ownership over the new lifestyle, when you take ownership over the new way of eating, working out, it's so much easier to follow, stay committed to when it's yours versus when you're just following what somebody else said. And so there always needs to be a transfership of ownership to have long-term success. And that's why the mentorship is so key. And it's key for the new people that are just getting started. Like literally, you just got done killing it. Like if there's nobody more qualified to help somebody else kill it than somebody who's like down in the trenches with them. And lastly, and I want to end with this, Matthew, because there's lots of people watching that they're going to see this and they're going to say, season 3, I didn't get in on season 3. Kaka, no, we don't know if there's going to be a season 4 yet. This is season by season. So before anybody asks. But what would you say to somebody watching who has had lots of failures and who has these secret desires, these secret hopes to lose the weight, but they just almost have given up and given in? They don't know if that's ever going to be their life. What would you say to that person?
Sure. Well, I would start with, and I don't mean to contradict myself in this, but the show in and of itself isn't magic any more than the formula is magic. The key is to decide to start and then actually keep it in front of you, right? Find someone to engage with, because I don't think walking this kind of path alone makes sense. Find community to engage with, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. I know if they applied, you've been in contact with them directly, and there's opportunities for them to apply that way. But there's nothing magic about being in front of a bunch of people as you journey. The fact is, in your day-to-day life, unless you live, breathe, and work from your basement, you're in front of a bunch of people anyway, and you'd be shocked how many people see you big and how many people will be struck by you changing that. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to be on the show, but at the same time, I don't think the show, obviously the show isn't required. It didn't exist. It was a common one on the journey, and there's no reason. The fact that you reached, especially for people who applied, like if you reached the point where you were willing to put yourself out like that, I think backing down now would be a mistake. And count yourself lucky that you don't have the weird anxiety of, oh my gosh, what did I say 2 weeks ago that's about to be on, YouTube in front of everybody, and then watching your friends who are on the journey with you be equally nervous, because that's weird. That's really weird. It's cool, but it's weird. And yeah, that bigger picture, just know that you as you exist are worthy. You're worthy of love, and you deserve the investment of being healthy. And that's a challenge we see right now, right? Like polite people don't point out that people are fat, right? And so the only people saying, hey, you should change, are the rude people. Being like, hey, eat a vegetable ever, blah, blah, blah. And so we have this nasty backlash where there's so much of a need for people to love themselves that we've just had to embrace one another and be like, hey, you're great the way you are. Love yourself. And that's true. But, find that honest friend or those people in your life who will simultaneously remind you that you're worth loving, but also not just be like, and so you should stay unhealthy, because that's not loving either. And it's finding that balance where really your journey, don't let your journey be a product of or about shame. Let it be about the realization that has no place in this journey, in the conversation, and instead just see that you're good, you're worth loving, and because of that, you deserve to be healthy.
100%. And, I personally believe that if that desire is planted, like all of us have this desire inside of us to be the best version of ourselves, not only in our health, but in our marriages, as a parent. Like none of us feel good about ourselves when we know that we're doing things that hurt that. And so if you're watching, just like Matthew said, and you are like, no, like Carmen, I really want to lose weight, and you identified with what he said, start somewhere. Starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere. I always say, even a shaky start is better than just sitting on the sidelines watching. And, I love what Matthew said about even the failures he had before this were what helped prepare him to succeed this time. And, failures, we actually learn more from those than our successes. So anyway, Matthew, winner of season 2, congratulations, 66 pounds, 21%. You're continuing on as a mentor. You're continuing on for another 12 weeks in the lifestyle phase, which is where we're getting into like how to maintain this. Like you're losing the weight. How do you live this thing out so that once you get to your goal, what's your goal, by the way?
My goal is, well, officially it's 150. Practically that works out to living between 145 and 155.
You'll have lost half of yourself.
And that is the dad joke I will never tire of. I will be literally half the man I used to be, right? And that's I'm gonna earn that joke, and then I'm gonna tell it till the day I die.
That's right.
That's the plan.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you for being open and honest and vulnerable. I know without a shadow of a doubt that you inspired people tonight with your hard work, with just, the entire journey that you've been going on. So thank you for joining us. If you're watching, thank you for spending this time with us. Make sure to give this guy some love, give him some thumbs up, encourage him in the comments, share this over on your social media platforms. This story deserves to be heard, needs to be heard. We all need to be inspired. In a world where there's a bunch of crap going on, the world needs more stories like Matthew's. So thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week, same time, same place.